The Force binds the galaxy together, creating a balance that has shaped civilizations for thousands of years. But on this day, something entered the galaxy that did not belong to its balance. Something older. Something forged in another reality entirely. The first sign came as a violent flash above a barren outer rim moon. Imperial tracking stations detected no hyperspace signature, no starship identification, nothing that fit known propulsion. Instead, sensors picked up a surge of raw cosmic energy, followed by a shockwave that rippled across the desert landscape. Every Imperial comm operator in the sector paused, confused. Something had arrived without using hyperspace at all. Down on the surface, a swirl of sand blasted outward in a perfect ring. When the dust settled, a single figure stood at the center of the impact site. Bald head, ashen skin, a red marking across his body. Chains scorched and broken clung to his forearms. And in his hand was a weapon completely unknown to any database in the Imperial archives. An axe made of metal that glowed with frost. The individual later identified as Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta, had entered the Star Wars galaxy. At first he simply looked around, studying the alien sky, the twin moons above him, and the dead horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. There were no gods here, no Valkyries, no realms stacked atop one another, just an unfamiliar, hostile wilderness. Kratos started walking, leaving a trail of heavy footprints in the sand. But only minutes after his arrival, Imperial scanners finally triangulated the anomaly. Patrol units were dispatched, assuming it was a crashed ship or smuggler activity. None of them expected to find a warrior standing alone in a crater, calmly examining the new world he'd been thrown into. The first Imperial speeder approached at full speed, kicking up sand. Troopers pointed blasters at the target, issuing the standard surrender commands. Kratos didn't react. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, analyzing these armored figures who barked orders as if they had authority over him. One trooper fired a warning shot. Kratos raised his hand and caught the bolt. The superheated plasma sizzled against his palm, then dispersed into sparks. The situation changed instantly. The Imperial patrol opened fire, unleashing a barrage meant to overwhelm any biological target. Kratos moved through the volley, blocking shots with a guardian shield and deflecting blaster bolts with movements too fast for the troopers to track. Within seconds, he closed the distance. The first trooper went flying from a single punch. The second lost his weapon to a strike from the Leviathan axe. The third was knocked unconscious before he even registered the attack. The entire skirmish lasted less than 10 seconds. And it was recorded through the helmet cam of one terrified stormtrooper, the only survivor who managed to crawl back toward his speeder. Minutes later, that footage reached an Imperial relay. The data traveled through secure channels, eventually landing in the worst possible place for the galaxy. The desk of Darth Vader. Inside the dark chamber of a Star Destroyer, Vader replayed the recording, examining every frame. Kratos catching a blaster bolt. Kratos throwing armored troopers aside like toys. Kratos wielding a weapon that glowed with elemental energy the Empire could not identify. Vader analyzed the posture, the strength, the sheer force emanating from this unknown warrior. He felt something else too, a disturbance in the Force. Not like a Jedi, not like a Sith, but a presence heavy enough to bend the fabric of the environment around him. Vader tightened his grip around the holodeble. Whoever this being was, his power was undeniable. Across the galaxy, rebel intelligence intercepted fragments of the same footage. Analysts were unsure if it was faked Imperial propaganda or real. But high-ranking members of the Alliance took it seriously. If the Empire was alarmed by someone, then the rebels needed to know why. Meanwhile, on the surface, the family Kratos had indirectly saved earlier peered out from behind the ruins of their moisture farm. They had witnessed everything. The explosion, the speeder chase, the battle. The young boy stepped closer to Kratos, fear and awe mixing in his eyes. His parents tried to call him back, but it was too late. Kratos turned toward the child, towering over him. The boy asked the only question he could think of. "Are you here to help us?" Kratos didn't answer. He didn't know the rules of this world. He didn't understand who its aggressors were. But he knew the look on the boy's face. He had seen it too many times across too many realms. People without power, caught in the wars of those who sought control. He did not speak, but he did not walk away. Above them, a metallic echo pierced the sky. Engines thundered. A shuttle descended, sleek, angular, unmistakably imperial. More troopers stepped out, forming tight ranks. The commander repeated the order to surrender. This time, before Kratos could respond, a probe droid floated behind the soldiers, red eye glowing. It scanned Kratos from head to toe, transmitting the data directly back to the orbiting Star Destroyer. Vader now knew exactly where the anomaly was. The troopers prepared to engage. But Kratos had already decided. If the rulers of this galaxy sent soldiers to threaten him and the innocent, then he understood everything he needed to know. The Leviathan axe spun into his hand. The shield unfolded. And as the wind ripped across the desert, the first real battle between Kratos and the Empire began. Within 1 hour of Kratos' arrival, the galaxy had already begun to shift. The Imperial patrol he defeated was not considered significant military loss, but the data they transmitted was. Every sensor reading, every helmet recording, every blaster telemetry file was forwarded to Imperial intelligence, and then straight to Darth Vader. The footage was reviewed repeatedly aboard the Star Destroyer Oblivion. Officers stood silent, unsure how to categorize what they were seeing. The data did not match any known species strength, durability, or combat behavior. Even Vader watched the clip without speaking. Kratos catching a blaster bolt. Kratos breaking a shock batten with his bare hand. Kratos crushing an Imperial speeder engine casing as if it were soft metal. The Admiral waited for Vader's reaction. Vader finally spoke. "This warrior is not trained in the Force, yet the Force reacts to him." No officer dared comment. The recording clearly showed something they could not explain. The air around Kratos bending during combat, sand lifting unnaturally, micro shifts in gravity that appeared when he struck. It wasn't the Force, but it wasn't normal. Vader issued a direct order. "Prepare a hunt. I am going to the surface myself." Within minutes, the ship shifted course. TIE fighters deployed in wide search patterns. Probe droids scattered across the desert moon. The Empire considered Kratos a potential planetary threat, not a single being. Rebel intelligence intercepts the feed. At a hidden rebel listening post, technicians scrambled as encrypted Imperial transmissions began flooding the channel. They decrypted fragments, enough to reconstruct the patrol's audio and video logs. When the image stabilized, rebel officers froze in place. A lone man defeating Imperial soldiers without a weapon. An axe that returned to his hand. Armorless, unarmored, unafraid. The lead analyst enlarged the frame. "He's not a Jedi." Another technician shook her head. "He's not anything we recognize." The recording moved to the part where Kratos resisted the blaster barrage and charged forward. The room went silent. Finally, a field captain said what everyone was thinking. "If the Empire wants him this badly, we need to find him first." They forwarded the intel up the chain, eventually reaching commanders who understood the stakes. If this being could challenge the Empire alone, then the rebellion needed to know who he was, and whether he was enemy or ally. The surface, Imperial reinforcements arrive. Kratos stood among the wreckage of the second patrol, breathing steadily. Dozens of troopers lay unconscious or scattered across the sand. Only the probe droid remained intact, floating at a distance and recording. He ignored it. His attention was on the sky. Dozens of small black dots were descending. Troop transports, atmospheric fighters, and scout craft. The Empire wasn't sending scouts anymore. They were sending an occupation force. The family hidden behind the ruins trembled. The boy clung to his mother. Kratos didn't look back, but he didn't move away from them either. A formation of stormtroopers surrounded him, shouting orders. Then, a heavy landing shook the ground. A larger shuttle opened its ramp, and officers stepped out carrying portable scanning equipment. One approached Kratos cautiously. You are now under Imperial custody. Kneel. He didn't. Blasters pointed at him from every direction, but Kratos remained still, studying their posture and movement. He had fought armies, monsters, and gods. He saw no difference here. The officer signaled. Troopers fired stun blasts. The energy struck Kratos directly, but instead of collapsing, he planted his feet and endured the impact. His skin glowed faintly as if absorbing the force. Troopers hesitated. Kratos moved. He grabbed one trooper, lifted him, and hurled him into two others. The remaining squad opened fire, but he shielded himself, advanced, and disabled them one by one. The officer retreated toward the shuttle, screaming into his comlink. He's too strong. We need Vader now. Vader prepares to descend. Aboard the Star Destroyer, Vader sensed the clash before receiving the report. The disturbance grew stronger, like a pressure wave moving through the Force. The Emperor-sealed holodeble activated automatically when the disturbance spiked. Emperor Palpatine appeared, small but unmistakably present. Palpatine, Lord Vader, I trust the anomaly has your full attention. Vader bowed slightly. Vader, he is powerful, my master. He destroyed 2 Imperial units. Palpatine leaned forward. Palpatine, do not kill him. Bring him to me. There was a pause. Vader, he is resistant. Palpatine, all the better. Break him. Then he will serve. The transmission ended. Vader turned away, cape flowing behind him as he marched to the shuttle bay. The hunt was now personal. The rebellion makes first contact. On the surface, a rebel covert scout team had observed the battlefield from afar. Their commander, Riona Vance, studied Kratos through macro binoculars. She saw the frozen ground where the axe struck. She saw the crater left by his fist. She saw an entire Imperial platoon defeated without casualties among civilians. She made a decision. The rebels approached carefully, weapons lowered but ready. Kratos turned immediately, sensing motion. The scout stopped. Riona stepped forward. We're not here to fight you. We saw what you did. The Empire wants to capture you or kill you. Kratos didn't respond, but he didn't attack. Riona continued. If you stay here, Vader will come. And when he comes, you won't be fighting soldiers. Kratos looked at the horizon again. He seemed to understand the threat, even if he didn't understand the galaxy. Riona motioned toward the family. Let us get them to safety. Then we can help you. Kratos finally spoke quietly. I do not need help. Riona replied. Maybe not. But they do. That mattered. Kratos stepped aside, allowing the rebels to escort the family into their transport. The sky darkens. A shadow fell across the desert, long, sharp, unmistakable. The rebels looked up. A Star Destroyer had descended low into the atmosphere. Its engines roared like thunder, casting an enormous silhouette across the dunes. The ground vibrated. Kratos stared upward, recognizing the arrival of a true challenger. Vader's shuttle detached and began a controlled descent, engines howling. Riona's eyes widened. We have to leave. Now. Kratos didn't move. He watched the shuttle land. The ramp extended. The desert wind tightened. Vader emerged. For the first time since entering this galaxy, Kratos felt a presence worthy of his attention. The second confrontation was inevitable, and it would be more destructive than the first. Vader's shuttle hit the sand with a deafening blast of hot air, scattering debris across the battlefield. Troopers formed a perimeter instantly, but they were merely background to the single dark figure descending the ramp. Darth Vader moved with a deliberate, heavy stride, each step measured, each movement precise. He wasn't approaching a fugitive. He was approaching a challenge. Kratos stood alone at the center of the clearing, the Leviathan axe planted in the ground beside him. The air between both warriors thickened as they faced each other for the first time on a battlefield without distractions. No trooper fire, no scattered confusion, no accident. Just two forces of nature closing in. Vader said nothing. Kratos said nothing. The Empire watched. The rebels hid in the dunes, observing. Even the wind seemed to hold back. Vader stopped at a distance of 10 meters. His respirator echoed like a mechanical beast. Then he activated his lightsaber, the red blade igniting with a violent hum. The crimson glow lit the sand around him. Kratos pulled the axe from the ground. Frost rolled from it in waves. Vader extended a hand, and the battle began. The Force challenges a god. The first attack didn't come from a strike. It came from the Force. Vader thrust his hand forward, unleashing a telekinetic wave powerful enough to hurl a speeder into the air. Sand flew upward in spirals. Rocks shattered. Kratos braced, planting his feet and raising the shield. The shock wave slammed into him, pushing him back several meters until his heels dug deep trenches in the ground. Vader advanced, trying to crush him with a second wave, this one sharper and more focused. Kratos blocked again, but the pressure was enough to bend the sand under him. He pushed forward through it. Vader increased the power. Kratos kept advancing. By the time he broke through the telekinetic pressure, Vader was already swinging. The red blade came down with lethal precision. Kratos brought the shield up, the impact exploding into a burst of sparks and red light. The vibration shook the sand around them. The Leviathan axe swung next, an upward arc aimed at Vader's midsection. Vader twisted aside, the blade scraping his armor without cutting through. He retaliated with a thrust, but Kratos used the shield to redirect the strike, forcing Vader to reposition. This was not a duel between trained Force warriors. This was brute strength versus dark mastery. Vader's surprise. Vader attempted something few enemies ever survived. He raised his left hand and clenched his fist, attempting a Force choke powerful enough to crush a bantha's neck. Kratos staggered. His vision tightened. His chest locked. But instead of collapsing, he roared. An explosive burst of raw willpower that pushed against the pressure grinding into his throat. Vader increased the grip. Kratos resisted harder. The Force pulled. Kratos pushed back. Then, with a violent lunge, he broke the invisible hold and hurled the Leviathan axe. The axe streaked toward Vader. Spinning in a frozen arc, Vader reacted instantly, shifting his blade to deflect. The axe struck the red blade and rebounded, but instead of falling to the ground, it looped back as if tethered to Kratos. Vader tracked its movement, realizing something important. This weapon was not bound by physics. It returned to Kratos' hand, Frost trailing behind it. Vader tightened his grip on his saber. This fight was becoming unpredictable. Brute force meets dark side mastery. Vader rushed forward, closing the distance with augmented speed. Kratos matched him with a shoulder charge, slamming into Vader's armor hard enough to dent the chest plate. Vader slid back, boots carving into the sand, then retaliated with a left-handed telekinetic strike, an invisible punch. Kratos was thrown off his feet, tumbling across the dunes. The Leviathan axe flew from his hand and embedded into a distant rock formation, freezing the stone. Vader did not give him time to recover. He extended his hand, ripping rocks from the ground and hurling them at Kratos like artillery shots. Kratos rolled aside, then sprinted toward the axe, dodging each projectile. He grabbed it, spun, and launched it again. This time Vader didn't try to block. He raised both hands and stopped the axe mid-air using the Force, holding it suspended between them. For a moment, neither moved. Kratos pulled. Vader held it. Sand trembled from the strain between them. Then Kratos summoned more strength, and the axe ripped free, flying back into his grasp. Vader reassessed. This being did not operate by the rules of the Force. He wasn't resisting through technique. He was resisting through sheer willpower. The Empire joins the fight. Stormtroopers finally opened fire on Kratos, attempting to overwhelm him during the duel. Blue blaster bolts filled the air. Kratos charged into them. The Guardian shield expanded, deflecting bolts in all directions. He plowed through the firing line, striking troopers with the shield's edge. 3 went down instantly. A 4th tried to grapple him, but Kratos lifted him by the helmet and threw him into an oncoming transport. The rebellion scouts watching from a ridge couldn't believe what they were seeing. He's fighting Vader and an entire battalion, and he's not losing. But Vader had no intention of letting the troopers interfere. He thrust out his hand. A shockwave blasted outward, sending Imperial soldiers sprawling. He didn't care about them. He wanted the anomaly. And Kratos understood that. The duel resumed. The final exchange of round 1. Vader moved with a series of aggressive, heavy strikes, each one designed to break the opponent. Kratos blocked 2, dodged 1, then met the 4th head-on. The lightsaber struck the axe, sending a ripple of light and frost across the sand. Kratos retaliated with a full-powered swing that connected with Vader's shoulder armor, sending the Sith Lord skidding back more than 10 meters. The ground shook. Vader barely kept his stance. But before Kratos could press forward, Vader unleashed a final burst of the Force, lifting Kratos off the ground and slamming him into the cliff behind them. The shock cracked the stone. For the second time, the two warriors separated, breathing hard, assessing damages. Neither side had won, and neither intended to retreat. But in the distance, both felt a new presence. The Empire was deploying more troops. The rebellion was closing in, and the Emperor himself was now monitoring the battle. This was no longer a confrontation. It was the beginning of a war. The effects of Kratos' clash with Darth Vader did not remain isolated to the battlefield. Within minutes, Imperial surveillance relays across the Outer Rim detected a spike of Force disturbance, an anomaly so intense it triggered emergency alerts normally reserved for Jedi uprisings or catastrophic hyperspace events. Those alarms reached the one person in the galaxy who always listened for tremors in the Force. Emperor Palpatine. Inside the throne chamber of the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Red Royal Guards stood motionless as a small hollow projector displayed the helmet cam recordings and telemetry data from Vader's units. Palpatine watched with a predatory stillness. Every frame, Kratos breaking free from the Force choke, deflecting blaster fire, overpowering Vader in physical exchanges, played back in cold detail. The Emperor leaned forward. This was no ordinary being. Even through the low-quality recordings, he sensed it, a presence outside the Force, but powerful enough to distort it. A physical will so strong it generated ripples normally only caused by Force-attuned beings. Palpatine extended a hand, rewinding a frame of Kratos blocking Vader's lightsaber with the Leviathan axe. The weapon didn't melt. It didn't crack. It didn't even glow red from the heat. Palpatine's eyes narrowed. Fascinating. Vader reports directly. Moments later, the Emperor's private holodeble activated. Vader appeared, armor-scorched and cloak-torn. He rarely looked damaged. Today he did. Palpatine studied him with quiet interest. Palpatine. Lord Vader, you have encountered the anomaly. Vader, he is strong. Stronger than any non-Force user I have faced. My abilities have limited effect. Palpatine watched the distortion around Vader's fist, the residual energy from the clash. Palpatine. His resistance is not natural, nor is his strength. A beat of silence followed. Vader clenched his mechanical hand. Vader, he must be captured. Quickly. Palpatine exhaled a slow, rasping breath. Palpatine, no. He must be understood. Vader didn't react outwardly, but tension radiated from him through the hologram. Palpatine, this warrior is not a threat to be crushed, my apprentice. He is a key to a doorway the Jedi never discovered. Vader's tone sharpened. Vader, he resisted my Force grip. He pushed through it. Palpatine smiled. Palpatine, then he is worthy of my attention. With a wave of his hand, the hologram shifted to a tactical map. Palpatine, you will not kill him. You will bring him to me, intact. Vader lowered his head, acknowledging the command, though displeased. The Emperor ended the transmission, but he did not turn off the projector. He kept the image of Kratos on screen, eyes glowing with curiosity and hunger. The Empire deploys special units. Knowing Vader alone had not subdued the target, Palpatine ordered a rare mobilization, one reserved for Force anomalies, ancient artifacts, and threats capable of destabilizing the Empire. The deployment included Shadow Guards trained in dark-side combat, Purge troopers equipped with electrostaffs, AT-ST walkers modified for desert pursuit, multi-direction probe networks, interdictor cruisers to trap the region as space. Reports describe the target as extreme biological hazard and unclassified mythic-tier threat. To the galaxy, the Empire looked terrified. To Palpatine, it meant opportunity. The rebellion responds. Meanwhile, the Rebel Scout team, led by Captain Riona Vance, had relocated the family Kratos, saved to a safer ridge, observing the growing Imperial presence below. From their vantage point, they watched wave after wave of Imperial reinforcements move through the desert. The sky was filled with shuttles. The dunes crawled with troops and walkers. It looked less like a military deployment and more like an attempt to contain a monster. Riona examined her datapad as new transmissions arrived. Scans of structural damage from Kratos' blows, heat readings from the axe, unknown energy signatures. A rebel lieutenant approached. "Captain, this is getting out of control. The Empire is moving half a fleet for just one man." Riona didn't take her eyes off the horizon, which means he's either the biggest threat or the biggest opportunity we've ever seen. She zoomed in on Kratos, standing alone in the sand, preparing for what came next. If the Empire gets him, we're done. Kratos understands the scale of the new world. Back on the battlefield, Kratos looked over the desert now filled with Imperial forces. The machines surrounding him were unlike anything he had fought in his home realm. Mechanical beasts with metal legs and glowing eyes, armored vehicles, ships that roared like dragons of steel. But one thing was familiar: oppression. And Kratos knew exactly how to respond to oppression. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He stood as still as a mountain, preparing for the storm. A frightened civilian, one of the people he protected earlier, pulled at his arm. "You can't fight them all. They'll kill you." Kratos didn't look down. "They will try." The first Imperial engagement. The Empire opened fire. Dozens of blaster bolts streaked across the sand. AT-ST cannons thundered. The ground trembled as Imperial forces converged. Kratos moved, and the desert exploded into chaos. He dodged cannon fire by inches, rolled beneath an AT-ST leg, and cleaved it with a single powerful swing. The machine toppled sideways, crashing violently into the dunes. Troopers fired from every direction. The shield flashed open, deflecting bolts. Kratos hurled the axe, shattering a turret, then caught it as it returned to his hand. A squad tried to flank him. He leapt, crashing into the center of their formation and sending bodies scattering like debris. The Empire quickly realized this was not a typical target. They adjusted tactics. Heavy gunners deployed explosive rounds. Shadow guards advanced with crackling electrostaffs. Probe droids updated Vader in real time. Kratos destroyed them all. But the Empire wasn't trying to kill him. They were trying to wear him down. And it was working. Kratos fought like an unrelenting force, but even he could feel the toll as wave after wave crashed into him. Then everything stopped. A pressure rippled through the sand. The temperature dropped. The storm quieted. Vader had returned. Palpatine makes his first move. Just as Vader stepped out of his shuttle, a hollow projection flickered inside the Imperial command tank nearby. Officers gathered around the shimmering blue figure of Palpatine, who watched the battle with predatory delight. "Palpatine, prepare containment protocols. The God Slayer will be mine." His voice slithered through the comms. The Emperor had no intention of letting Vader claim victory alone. Kratos was too valuable, too powerful, too unpredictable. And Palpatine always collected powerful things. The stage is set. Kratos tightened his grip on the axe. Vader ignited his lightsaber again. Imperial forces formed a wide circle. Rebel scouts watched from hidden canyons. The Emperor observed from across the galaxy. This was no longer an encounter. This was the opening act of a conflict that could reshape the Star Wars galaxy forever. And neither Kratos nor Vader intended to back down. Not now. Not ever. The desert fell silent for a moment, just long enough for both sides to prepare. The Empire had now committed a full containment force. Shadow Guard's elite darkside trained warriors stepped out from armored transports, their red-bladed electrostaffs crackling with unstable energy. Purge troopers formed tight formations behind them. Probe droids orbited the battlefield like metallic vultures. Kratos stood at the center, blood streaking across his skin, sweat and sand dripping down his arms. He was breathing heavier now. Not exhausted, but pushed, tested. The last time he had been surrounded by this many enemies, he had been fighting multiple realms at once. This time, the realm fought back with machines and the Force. Vader approached slowly, his cape dragging across the sand, the red blade of his lightsaber cutting a faint glow through the dust. The Shadow Guards flanked him in a tight formation. This was no longer an engagement. It was an execution squad. At least, that's what the Empire believed. The Shadow Guard tests the god of war. With a shrill metallic screech, the first Shadow Guard attacked, moving faster than any trooper Kratos had faced. The guard spun the electrostaff with fluid precision and struck at Kratos' head. Kratos blocked with the shield. The impact released a burst of electricity that surged across the shield surface, crackling against Kratos' arm. Another guard struck from behind. Kratos ducked, spun, and slammed the shield backwards, sending that guard tumbling. 3 more advanced in unison. This was different from the troopers. These fighters were aggressive, disciplined, trained in techniques influenced by the dark side. Kratos swung the Leviathan axe, connecting with one guard's electrostaff. The clash released a violent shockwave, dark side energy grinding against frosty runes. The guard held the lock for a moment, then was overwhelmed by raw strength, the axe shattering the staff's tip and cleaving through the guard's armor. The remaining Shadow Guards circled him, attacking from all directions. Kratos moved with a fury none of them were prepared for. Shield bashes, heavy kicks, and precision strikes. The battlefield shook as one by one, the dark side, infused warriors, fell beneath the assault. But none of this distracted Vader. He was learning, watching, studying Kratos' every movement. Vader enters again. As the final Shadow Guard collapsed, Vader stepped forward. The troopers instinctively backed away, giving the 2 warriors space. Vader lifted a hand. Sand lifted with it, an entire wall of it, rotated and compressed into a swirling storm. He hurled the sandstorm forward, a massive wave of particles driven by the Force. Kratos braced, but the blast staggered him, forcing him to his knees. Vader closed the distance with a single leap, bringing the lightsaber down in a powerful overhead strike. Kratos rolled aside, then returned with a wide axe swing. Vader blocked, sparks bursting into the air. The second duel began, faster, fiercer, more destructive than the first. Kratos struck low. Vader deflected. Vader thrust forward. Kratos dodged. Sand exploded with every impact. This time, Vader used both hands aggressively, pushing the boundaries of his cybernetic strength. Kratos responded with raw muscle and untamed force. The clash was less like 2 fighters and more like 2 natural disasters slamming into each other. Kratos pushes back. Kratos changed tactics first. He closed the distance, ramming his shoulder into Vader's torso. Vader stumbled, but steadied himself. Kratos then grabbed Vader's arm and pulled, attempting to break the mechanical limb. For a moment, metal groaned. Servos strained. Vader's armor cracked under the pressure. Vader responded with a point-blank force blast that hurled Kratos across the battlefield. He skidded through the sand, crashing into a half-buried rock formation. Kratos rose, wiping blood from his forehead. He'd fought gods. He'd fought titans. He'd fought beings far larger and older than this masked warrior. But Vader was different. Not stronger, but more relentless. This galaxy's magic was not like the realms he knew. The Force pushed and pulled differently, bending the very environment around it. Kratos gripped the axe tighter. The Empire overwhelms with numbers. Imperial commanders saw an opening. They deployed heavy weapons, plasma cannons, repeating blasters, even portable missile tubes. The air filled with green and blue bolts, streaking toward Kratos. Kratos didn't retreat. He charged forward. Blaster fire tore across the battlefield. He blocked some, dodged others, but several strikes hit home, burning into his skin, leaving smoking marks across his arms and chest. He powered through the pain, accelerating until he reached the first heavy trooper. One strike. Down. A second heavy unit fired a missile. Kratos deflected it with a shield, sending the explosive projectile into a passing AT-ST, blowing the walker apart. Troopers scattered. But this was the Empire. Their retreat wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. The moment Kratos recentered himself, the ground trembled again. Vader had returned. The Force begins to shift. Vader used a strategy he had been building toward. He reached through the Force and pulled, not at Kratos, but at the axe. The Leviathan axe lurched forward, its runes flickering as it was dragged toward Vader by sheer Force dominance. Kratos held it with both hands, boots digging into the sand, resisting the pull with brute strength. The battle became a test of wills. Vader's mastery of the Force against Kratos' godlike strength. Sand spiraled upward between them, caught in the invisible tug-of-war. Vader amplified the Force. Kratos roared and pulled harder. The axe wavered, vibrating violently. Then Kratos lunged forward, ripping the axe free from the Force grip and slamming it into the ground, unleashing a shock wave of ice that blasted outward. Vader stepped back, cloak snapping in the cold burst. For the first time, he was momentarily thrown off balance. The battle reaches critical levels. Imperial scanners aboard the orbiting Star Destroyer triggered alarms. Power levels across the battlefield were spiking, dark side fluctuations from Vader, and an unclassified energy surge from Kratos. Even the Force felt strained. To the rebellion scout team hidden in the ridge, it looked like a duel between two beings who shouldn't exist in the same world. Riona Vance watched, stunned. If Vader wins, the Empire gains a weapon. If Kratos wins, they gain a monster. She didn't know which outcome was worse. The moment both sides realized the truth. Vader lunged with a strike meant to end the duel. Kratos blocked, but the force of the hit pushed him to one knee. Vader brought the blade down again. Kratos caught it on the axe, sparks blasting upward. Neither moved. Vader leaned forward. "You will submit." Kratos pushed back, teeth bared. "I submit to no one." The force of their clash exploded outward, knocking troopers off their feet, sending rocks flying, and creating a burst visible from orbit. Both fighters were thrown in opposite directions. Kratos hit a dune and rolled. Vader crashed into a rock formation. Smoke and dust filled the battlefield. For a brief moment, no one attacked. No one fired. They simply stared at each other through the chaos. Both wounded. Both enraged. Both realizing this was far from over. The Empire repositioned. The rebels prepared to intervene. The Emperor watched with ravenous interest. And every faction now understood one thing. Kratos was not a target. He was a new force in the galaxy. And the war for control of him had just begun. The desert storm of dust and smoke slowly settled. What remained was the aftermath of two unstoppable forces colliding. AT-ST wreckage smoldered in the dunes. Shadow Guard armor lay shattered in dark metallic pieces. Purge troopers struggled to regain formation. And between them, Kratos and Darth Vader, both rising, both unwilling to retreat. But the Empire's strategy shifted. Kratos had proven something no Imperial tactician expected. He could fight Vader and survive. Not just survive, match him. This was no longer a battlefield engagement. This was a containment crisis. And Emperor Palpatine wanted the target alive. The Empire adapts. Imperial officers scrambled, shouting into comm units as tactical displays flickered in their speeders. Deploy the graviton nets. Don't get in close, keep distance. Redirect the walkers to the ridge. Funnel him toward the canyon. Shadow Guard reinforcements en route, ETA 5 minutes. This was the first time Kratos began to see the intelligence of this enemy. They weren't just powerful. They were methodical, adaptable. This wasn't a horde of monsters or a legion of undead. It was a fusion of strategy and overwhelming firepower. And they were studying him. High above the battlefield, TIE fighters swept across the sky, circling like hunting birds of prey. But instead of firing, they maintained formation, tracking, reporting. Every troop movement was no longer about killing Kratos. It was about boxing him in, corralling him, breaking him down piece by piece. A strategy he recognized. A strategy he'd used on gods. Kratos' strategic retreat. Kratos wiped blood from his lip as Vader rose from the sand. The Sith Lord's mechanical breathing seemed harsher, his armor dented, cape ripped. The red glow of the lightsaber still burned, but less steady. They were evenly matched physically, but the environment, the numbers, the endless waves, this galaxy fought as one. Kratos stepped backward, eyes scanning the sands. He did not fear death, but neither did he fight blindly. Surviving wasn't cowardice. It was warcraft. He sheathed the axe across his back and turned away. Troopers gasped. Vader's stance tightened. Kratos was not running. He was choosing the next battlefield. Blaster fire resumed immediately. Kratos sprinted across the dunes, rolling behind a large rock outcrop. Blaster bolts exploded against it, sending shards of stone raining down. He vanished into the sandstorm brewing at the canyon's edge. Vader pursues. The moment Kratos disappeared into the canyon system, Vader strode forward, extending a hand to halt his troops. He is mine. No one argued. But even Vader knew entering a canyon, tight, unpredictable, full of blind corners, was dangerous, especially against a warrior who fought like a storm. Still, the Force pulsed around the area, guiding him. Vader pushed forward. Behind him, the Empire slowly, methodically sealed off the canyon entrances with heavy equipment, deployable barriers, and artillery emplacements. They weren't trying to trap Kratos in the open. They were trying to cage him. The rebels move. From her vantage point in the higher cliffs, Captain Riona Vance watched the entire perimeter shift, her scope sweeping across Imperial deployments. She cursed under her breath. They're boxing him in. If they catch him, we lose our chance. Her lieutenant adjusted his macro binoculars. Ma'am, he's heading into the canyon. Alone. Riona didn't hesitate. We follow. Quietly. Her team moved, using hidden paths carved by ancient waterflows. Their mission wasn't to rescue Kratos. It was to determine whether he could tip the balance of galactic power. Rebel intelligence didn't often gamble. But today, they were betting on a wild card. Kratos enters the canyon. Inside the canyon, the temperature dropped. Shadows replaced blistering sunlight. The walls rose steeply, narrowing into twisting paths. Kratos slowed his pace, listening. He knew this environment. He had fought beasts in similar places, where echoes played tricks and ambushes waited behind every corner. He heard movement, boots, metal scraping stone, mechanical hums. He wasn't alone. A red glow reflected off the canyon walls. Vader had entered. The canyon duel begins. Without warning, Vader launched the attack. A violent telekinetic pull combined with a forward charge. Kratos slammed into a canyon wall, dust and gravel raining down. Vader closed in, blade slashing. Kratos blocked with the axe, sparks exploding. But here, in tight confines, every movement mattered. Vader extended his hand and crushed the air around Kratos' throat. The Force constricted like an invisible serpent. Kratos growled, struggling. His feet scraped against the stone. The axe's runes flickered. But Vader had made a mistake. He brought Kratos closer. Close enough for Kratos to reach him. Kratos' hand snapped outward, grabbing Vader's wrist with crushing strength. He yanked Vader forward, slamming him into the wall with enough force to crack stone. Vader released the choke immediately. The canyon echoed with the impact. A fight in tight spaces. The duel became brutal, close quarters, savage. Kratos struck with elbows, knees, shield bashes. Vader countered with force bursts that cracked the canyon floor. At one point, Vader attempted a force push. Kratos braced, slid backwards several feet, then broke the technique by slamming the shield into the ground to anchor himself. Moments later, Kratos headbutt Vader. The impact dented the helmet's forehead plate. Vader retaliated by igniting the second blade of his saber staff variant, an experimental design rarely used. The dual-ended blade forced Kratos to retreat momentarily, the confined space erupting with red light. But Kratos adapted, ducking under one blade, blocking the other with the axe, then slamming the shield into Vader's ribs, sending the Sith tumbling across the canyon floor. Imperial intervention. Before Kratos could press the advantage, troopers dropped in from the ridge above, rappelling down ropes, firing stun nets and ion grenades. Kratos swatted aside nets, catching one mid-air and hurling it back at the troopers, entangling them. More dropped in. The canyon lit up with flashes of blue ion energy. Kratos swung the axe in a wide arc, freezing the canyon wall for several meters, causing part of it to collapse and bury several troopers. But this was only the beginning. Above, from a hovering transport, a purge commander yelled, "Release the graviton field." A spherical device fell into the canyon, pulsing with purple energy. When it detonated, a gravitational wave rippled outward, slowing Kratos, pulling at his limbs, dragging him down. It wasn't enough to restrain him, but it weakened him. Just enough. Vader stood again, advancing. The canyon begins to collapse. Their combined power, force shoves, axe strikes, explosives, fractured the canyon walls. Rocks began to tumble. Cracks spread overhead. Troopers evacuated immediately. Riona and her team ducked behind cover. The canyon was becoming a death trap. Vader realized this. So did Kratos. But neither stopped. Their battle reached a point where the canyon simply couldn't withstand the energy. A final collision. Kratos' shield slam against Vader's force push shattered the rock shelf above them. The canyon collapsed. Dust and debris swallowed everything. Troopers ran. Rebels shielded themselves. The battlefield became a thunderous cloud of destruction. When the dust finally cleared, Kratos and Vader were gone, buried somewhere beneath tons of stone. A dangerous new game. Imperial scanners rushed to life. Rebel scopes zoomed desperately. Both factions tried to find a trace, any signal, any movement, any sign of the two titans. But all that remained was silence. The realization spread across both armies. Kratos and Vader were alive, but now they were underground, alone, in complete darkness. And the hunt was far from over. The canyon's collapse was violent enough to be felt miles away. Dust clouds rose like volcanic plumes. Troopers scrambled. Rebel scouts ducked. Imperial scanners blared warnings. Rockfall continued to rumble for nearly a full minute. But when the noise finally died, a chilling silence followed. Deep beneath the surface, sealed away from both armies above, lay a vast subterranean chamber, formed by ancient erosion and exposed violently by the canyon's collapse. Darkness swallowed everything. Not a sliver of sunlight made it through. And somewhere in that abyss, two figures stirred. Kratos rises in the dark. Kratos pushed a slab of stone off his body and slowly stood. His muscles trembled from the impact, but not from weakness. The landing had been savage, yet survivable. He could not see, but he didn't need his eyes. He listened. Air currents, shifting gravel, mechanical breathing, the faint hum of a weapon. Vader was alive. Somewhere in the dark, Kratos lifted a hand. The Leviathan axe tore free from the rubble, flying toward him through the darkness. He caught it with a familiar thud. The cold light blue glow of the runes reflected faintly off the walls. Enough to see by. Just barely. Vader rises too. On the opposite side of the cavern, several meters away, a red glow flickered to life. Vader's lightsaber. The blade illuminated fractured stone, dust drifting like ash, and Vader's imposing silhouette. Helmet cracked, cape torn, armor dented. The two warriors stood facing each other across the darkness. No army, no troopers, no machines, just two forces of nature in a world beneath a world. The battle resumes, more savage than before. Without a word, Vader surged forward, lightsaber carving a line of fire through the darkness. Kratos met the charge with the shield raised, sparks bursting like lightning in the pitch-black cavern. Vader slashed, thrust, spun with precision. Kratos blocked, countered, slammed his shield forward. The confined spaces above had restricted movement. Down here, in a large underground chamber, they had room to unleash everything. Every strike echoed like thunder. Stone shattered under their feet. Stalactites broke loose, falling like spears. Shockwaves rippled across the cavern's surface. Vader extended a hand and used the force, ripping a massive boulder from the ground and hurling it. Kratos ducked and rolled aside as it crashed behind him, splitting apart. Kratos retaliated by throwing the Leviathan axe. The weapon flew like a comet, blue runes burning through the gloom. Vader twisted, raising his saber to deflect. But the axe wasn't a normal projectile. It redirected mid-flight, curving around Vader's defense before he could anticipate the change. The impact blasted him backward into a cave wall, dust erupting. The axe flew back to Kratos' hand. The force's effect grows stronger. But down here, cut off from the winds, the heat, the noise above, the force behaved differently. It pooled, thickened, concentrated. Vader felt it first, like gravity shifting around him, the dark side flowing in dense currents. His power grew sharper, more precise. He lifted both hands, dragging loose stones into the air, forming a ring of debris around him. Kratos charged. Vader launched the stones like a rapid-fire barrage. Unlike blaster bolts, these were heavier, faster. Kratos smashed some aside with a shield, dodged others, and crashed through the last few with brute strength, closing the distance. But Vader was ready. He lifted both hands and released a wave of dark side energy that shattered Kratos' momentum. The Spartan slammed into the cavern floor, cracks spiderwebbing beneath him. Vader advanced. Kratos rose. Neither spoke. Their breaths, their movements, their strikes, those were their dialogue. Deeper caves, more danger. Their battle drifted deeper into the cavern system, where narrow tunnels and sudden drops created unpredictable terrain. Pools of underground water glimmered faintly in the axe's glow. Strange echoing sounds pulsed through the tunnels, animals or air currents, impossible to tell. At one point, Kratos swung and missed, striking a wall so hard the entire tunnel vibrated. Vader used the moment to his advantage. He extended his hand, and Kratos felt the force constrict around his chest again. Kratos staggered. The choke was stronger this time, more precise, enhanced by the cavern's resonance of the force. But Kratos had learned. He hurled the Leviathan axe not at Vader, but into the cavern wall, where it embedded deep. Then he reached toward it with his free hand. The axe ripped free, dragging Kratos with it, breaking Vader's choke by pulling Kratos sideways out of the force's hold. Kratos landed in a slide, grabbed the axe mid-motion, and lunged forward in a powerful shoulder charge, slamming Vader into a stone pillar. The pillar cracked, then snapped in half. The ceiling groaned. Dust rained from above. The entire cavern system was destabilizing again. The ceiling collapses, and an underground river is revealed. A second collapse rocked the chamber. Stone fell in massive chunks. A fissure opened in the floor. Cold wind blasted upward. Kratos and Vader both leapt back as the floor split, revealing a rushing subterranean river far below, lit faintly by glowing minerals. The river churned violently, roaring like an angry beast. The cavern fractured again. Vader slashed a falling boulder in half midair. Kratos rolled away from another chunk. Both found themselves on separate sides of a widening gap. The river below grew closer as the ledges crumbled. Neither could cross, not without risking a fall that even they may not survive. Vader's eyes, hidden behind the mask, never left Kratos. The force swirled around him, alive with agitation and hunger. Kratos gripped his axe tighter. Then, unexpectedly, the ledge beneath Vader gave way. For a moment, he hovered, then plummeted. A roar echoed through the cavern as Vader fell toward the rushing river. The Sith Lord vanished into the darkness below. Kratos does not celebrate. Kratos stood at the ledge, chest rising heavily. He did not assume victory. He had fought too many gods who refused to die simply because they fell. He listened. Nothing. The river roared below, swallowing all sound. Kratos turned away, scanning the cavern for a path upward. He knew the Empire would not stop. They would never stop. He needed to escape the underground before the next wave found him. He found a narrowing tunnel leading uphill, an exit path carved by ancient water. He moved. Every step forward brought him closer to the surface, but also deeper into the Empire's tightening net. The Empire scans reactivate. Above ground, Imperial scanners pinged. Movement detected. Single life form. Rising toward surface. Officers scrambled. It's him. The target is surfacing. TIE fighters veered toward the canyon. Stormtroopers repositioned. At ATS began shifting their stance. Probe droids swarmed toward the new coordinates. And high above, in orbit, a Star Destroyer repositioned to cover the canyon exit. Kratos was alive. Vader was missing. And every faction now understood something terrifying. Kratos wasn't defeated. He was evolving, learning their strategies, adapting to their world. The hunt was about to enter its most dangerous stage yet. Kratos emerged from the narrow tunnel with a low exhale, lifting a curtain of vines and stone fragments as he stepped into pale daylight. He'd surfaced near the canyon's far edge, far from where he and Vader had fallen, but not far enough to escape Imperial eyes. The wind carried the scent of ozone, engines, metal. The Empire was already here. They hadn't waited for Vader. They hadn't paused to assess the cavern collapse. They moved with machine-like precision, reacting to the single fact that mattered. The target was alive. The Empire deploys an interception grid. High above, the roar of TIE engines grew louder. A squadron broke formation, spiraling downward in a coordinated hunting pattern. Probe droids swept ahead of them, scanning the surface with red eyes that cut through dust and shadow. Kratos stepped onto rocky ground as the first probe descended toward him, its repulsors whining sharply. It didn't hesitate. It locked on and began firing. Blaster rounds snapped through the air. Kratos spun aside, raising the Guardian shield. Red bolts struck the metal with sharp clangs. Sparks sprayed in every direction. The moment the probe retreated to reposition, Kratos hurled the Leviathan axe. The weapon cut the drone clean in half. The two pieces fell smoking into the canyon. But destroying a scout only accelerated the Empire's response. TIE fighters swoop in. The TIE squadron descended in a screaming dive. Their engines echoed against the canyon walls like war sirens. Blaster fire rained down, precise, concentrated, merciless. Kratos sprinted along the canyon rim. The ground exploded behind him. Smoke burst around his feet. Every blast crater reminded him how unfamiliar this world's weapons were, how relentless these soldiers were. But Kratos did not fear overwhelming odds. He had faced armies before. He slid behind a rock outcrop as a trio of TIEs swept past, strafing the ground. The moment they banked to circle back, Kratos burst from cover, leaping higher than any human should be able. The TIE pilots had just enough time to register the shape rising into their path, but not enough time to react. Kratos landed on the wing of the lead fighter. Metal groaned under his weight. The pilot inside panicked, jerking the controls. The TIE spiraled out of formation as Kratos tore into the hull with brute force, prying open part of the cockpit frame. The pilot screamed, then vanished in a flash as the fighter crashed into the canyon wall, exploding into a firestorm of debris. Kratos jumped free, landing in a roll as the fireball lit the sky behind him. Two more TIEs banked in for another pass, furious and shaken. The Empire escalates. Far above the canyon, a signal pulsed through Imperial channels. Target is highly mobile. Unconfirmed reports of enhanced physical capacity. Initiate ground assault. AT-AT unit advancing. Heavy footsteps soon followed. Thudding. Echoing. Mechanical. A shadow grew across the canyon floor. Kratos turned and saw an AT-AT approaching from the far ridge. Its colossal legs crushed stone. Its head turret began rotating downward like some monstrous metal predator ready to consume its prey. Blaster cannons charged. Kratos braced his stance. The AT-AT fired. A torrent of red energy streaked across the battlefield. The shot punched a crater into the earth and hurled Kratos backward. Dust and debris erupted around him. He rose quickly, but even he could feel the force behind those blasts. The Empire wasn't probing anymore. They were deploying weapons designed for war. Entire wars. And all of them aimed at one man. Kratos fights back. Kratos sprinted across the canyon floor as another AT-AT blast scorched the ground behind him. He swung his axe at a fallen chunk of stone, striking it with immense force. The shockwave sent the boulder hurtling through the air. It slammed into one of the AT-AT's legs with a thunderous crack. The walker staggered, metal plating bending inward, but it did not fall. The pilot inside stabilized, adjusting targeting systems. Meanwhile, the two remaining TIE fighters swooped back into formation above, raining coordinated blaster fire from the sky. Kratos could not allow himself to be pinned down between air and ground strikes. He planted his feet, threw the axe straight up. The blade spun wildly, catching the sun, then severing a TIE fighter's wing in a single clean slice. The ship spiraled out of control, slamming into the canyon wall. Kratos called the axe back. It returned dripping molten metal from the overheated TIE engine. The last fighter hesitated and retreated upward, circling cautiously. Stormtroopers converge. Kratos barely had time to breathe before the next wave arrived. White-armored stormtroopers rushed into the canyon from transport carriers, forming firing lines with synchronized discipline. Red bolts flooded the battlefield. Kratos threw his shield forward, bulldozing straight through the front line. Stormtroopers scattered, unable to stand against the sheer weight and momentum behind his charge. Several went flying. Others were crushed against rocks. But more kept coming. Rows and rows of them. He swung the axe, cleaving through stone and armor alike. He grabbed a trooper by the chest plate and hurled him into a squad. The impact sent bodies tumbling in every direction. Still the Empire pushed deeper. Still more troopers appeared. Still the AT-AT advanced. The hunt had become a siege. The Empire's plan shifts. High above the battlefield, aboard the Star Destroyer overseeing the operation, Imperial commanders reviewed the data pouring in. Unidentified humanoid. Extreme durability. Advanced reflexes. No signs of fatigue. Potential force anomaly. One officer turned to the lead commander. "Sir, this is Vader's target." And Vader has not reported in. The commander's face darkened. If Lord Vader has fallen, this creature is now the highest priority threat in the sector. He leaned forward. "Prepare the Inquisitors." A chilling silence followed. Should we wait for confirmation of Lord Vader's? Do it. The order was final. Within minutes, a new signal spread through the sector. One that Kratos could not yet hear. Inquisitors were coming. Force-trained hunters. Dark side warriors. Vader's chosen instruments. If Kratos was strong enough to challenge Vader, they would descend on him with everything the dark side could muster. Kratos realizes the world is shifting against him. Back on the ground, Kratos broke the last of the immediate trooper line, his breathing steady despite the chaos. He stood surrounded by wreckage, smoldering TIE engines, broken armor, scorched stone. But the Empire wasn't retreating. Their forces weren't thinning. If anything, their strategy was improving. They studied him, measured him, adjusted to him. Kratos could feel it. A world that learned, adapted, pushed back. This galaxy was unlike his own. Its armies were vast. Its machines relentless. Its warriors trained to fight threats across hundreds of worlds. And soon, more were coming. More powerful than any soldier. Kratos looked toward the canyon opening, sensing the next wave approaching. Something colder, darker, filled with a presence he recognized from Vader. The dark side. The river beneath the earth had carried Vader away. But the Empire was sending others who wielded the same power. Hunters who lived for pursuit. Warriors who thrived in the shadows. Servants who answered only to the dark side. Kratos tightened his grip on his axe. He had fought gods before. He could do it again. But in this galaxy, the gods fought back with armies. The wind shifted. The battlefield, still smoldering from the wreckage Kratos had left behind, fell unnaturally quiet. Even the stormtroopers who had survived the assault halted their advance. Their helmets turned upward toward the sky. Something was coming. Kratos sensed it before he saw it. A pressure in the air. A coldness spreading across the canyon. Not like Vader. Different. Multiple presences. Faint, but growing stronger with every second. Then the transport appeared, sleek, black, cutting through the air without the shrieking roar of a TIE fighter. It descended with an unsettling grace, casting a long shadow across the battlefield. Stormtroopers moved aside. No one needed to shout orders. They knew who was inside. The ramp lowered, and 3 figures stepped out. The Inquisitorius. They were unmistakable. Clad in black armor, each carrying a double-bladed red lightsaber, and wearing masks built to intimidate. Their presence rippled with dark side energy, not as deep as Vader's, but sharper, colder, more predatory. The 5th brother, the 7th sister, and behind them, silent as a blade in the dark, the 8th brother. One of them spoke first. "This is the creature Lord Vader pursued." Another answered. "It destroyed our forces. It challenged Lord Vader. It threatens Imperial order." Their visors locked onto Kratos. Their footsteps were slow, measured, confident. They didn't see an army killer. They saw prey. The first exchange. The 7th sister moved first. Her saber ignited with a snap hiss, illuminating the dust around her. She dashed forward with inhuman speed, crossing the battlefield in seconds. Her blades swung downward. Kratos blocked with the Guardian Shield, sparks exploding on impact. The blow was stronger than any trooper. Stronger than any machine he'd faced. But still not Vader. Kratos countered, punching forward with the shield. The 7th sister slid back across the dirt, boots grinding trenches into the ground. The 5th brother stepped in immediately, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. His saber spun, creating a red disk of continuous motion. He swung it sideways. Kratos dodged, the blade slicing through the rock behind him like it was nothing. The 8th brother leaped from above, aiming to strike Kratos from behind. Kratos grabbed his axe and swung upward. The weapons collided, creating a boom that echoed like an explosion. The 8th brother twisted in midair and landed several meters away, staring at Kratos with growing caution. The Inquisitors exchanged glances. This was no simple creature. The Force surges against him. The 5th brother extended his hand. The ground trembled. A wave of Force energy slammed into Kratos like a battering ram. He dug his feet into the ground, resisting it. Stones cracked beneath him. Dust swirled into a vortex. The 7th sister joined in, her hand raised. The combined pressure intensified. Kratos' muscles shook under the invisible weight. The air compressed around him, threatening to crush his lungs. For a moment, the Inquisitors seemed to gain the advantage. 3 dark side users focusing their power on a single point. Kratos dropped to a knee. But before they could tighten the invisible grip, he struck the ground with the axe. The resulting shockwave shattered the Force hold, creating a blast that sent all 3 Inquisitors stumbling backward. The canyon once again echoed with the sound of warriors regrouping. The Inquisitors adapt. This time, they coordinated. The 7th sister launched small probe microdroids that darted around Kratos, projecting red flashes that disrupted his timing. The 8th brother used his emitter to activate his saber's helicopter-like spin, allowing him to dart around the battlefield at unpredictable angles, striking fast, retreating faster. The 5th brother advanced head-on, heavy strikes meant to trap Kratos in place. Their strategy was clear. Overwhelm him with speed. Disorient him with misdirection. Strike where he couldn't defend. Kratos blocked a blow from the 5th brother, ducked under a spin from the 8th brother, caught a droid in midair and crushed it. But they were too many, too coordinated, too used to hunting Force wielders across the galaxy. One of the microdroids distracted him for half a second. The 7th sister took the opening. Her blade slashed across Kratos' back, sparks and blood flying in the same instant. Kratos staggered. The wound burned, dark side energy seeping into the cut like venom. The Inquisitor stopped, sensing it. The seventh sister tilted her head. He bleeds. The fifth brother stepped forward. Good. That means he can die. Kratos fights with rage. Pain fueled him. Not fear. Never fear. Kratos roared and charged the fifth brother. Slamming into him with such force, the Inquisitor was hurled across the battlefield and smashed into the canyon wall. The eighth brother attacked from above, and Kratos met him mid-air with a brutal upward strike that sent him spinning. The seventh sister tried to leap back, but Kratos was faster. He seized her by the throat and slammed her into the ground with enough force to crack her mask. He raised the axe, but the fifth brother returned, slamming Kratos aside with a powerful telekinetic shove. The eighth brother used the moment to ignite his spinning saber again, darting around Kratos like a vulture picking at a dying beast. Multiple slashes found their mark. Kratos grunted, blocking some, absorbing others. The seventh sister recovered and joined the assault. Red blades blurred around him. He fought all three at once. The ground split beneath their feet from the sheer force of their clashes. The Inquisitors tried to finish it. Together, the hunters formed a triangular formation, circling Kratos. They leveled their sabers toward him, their masks tilted, their bodies radiating cold confidence. The seventh sister spoke first. This is your end. The fifth brother added, even Vader could not kill you quickly, but we will. All three surged forward at once, their blades cutting through the air in a killing strike meant to end the battle decisively. Kratos braced. He was wounded, outnumbered, pressed against overwhelming power. But he was not defeated. Not yet. The Inquisitors closed in, just as the ground beneath them erupted. The river returns. A deep rumble echoed across the canyon floor. The collapse beneath Vader hours earlier had not finished shifting the underground network. The earth cracked beneath their feet. A roar surged up from below. The subterranean river, the same one that swallowed Vader, burst upward through a fault line, exploding into the open canyon like a geyser of churning water. The force knocked all four combatants off their feet. Kratos was thrown backward into a rock face. The Inquisitors were hurled apart, scattering across the rising torrent. Water crashed through the battlefield, sweeping stormtroopers away and flooding the canyon floor in seconds. The transport ship lifted off to avoid being swallowed. The Inquisitors struggled to regain footing in the chaos. And Kratos vanished beneath the rushing water. The hunt does not end. The fifth brother emerged first, slamming his blade into a rock to stabilize himself. Where is he? The seventh sister activated her mask scanner. Nothing. No heat signature. No movement. No life form reading. Only the roar of the flooding canyon. The Inquisitors stood silently as the water continued to rise. They hadn't won, but in their minds, Kratos was lost to the river. They exchanged a single look. The hunt wasn't over. It had simply changed. And somewhere deep beneath the canyon floor, Kratos' story in this galaxy was far from finished. For a long moment, there was only darkness. Cold water pressed against Kratos from all sides as the violent current dragged him through the subterranean river. Jagged rocks bruised his skin. The rushing torrent spun him, slammed him into walls, pulled him deeper into the planet's veins. Any normal being would have drowned instantly. Kratos held his breath, endured, waited. The river carried him for what felt like miles, through twisting tunnels and collapsing caverns, until finally he felt the current weaken, the pressure lighten, and the walls widen. He kicked upward and burst through the surface into a vast underground reservoir. He gasped for air, and then he swam toward the only shore in sight. A new location, ancient caverns below the surface. Kratos dragged himself onto the stone bank and rose, breathing hard. The Leviathan axe remained clenched in his hand, somehow still with him after being swallowed by the river's chaos. Blue runes glowed faintly on the cavern walls. Symbols. scripts, markings carved by a civilization long gone. Kratos ran his fingers over one of the carvings. A hooded figure, hands stretched outward, energy around them depicted as swirling lines. He didn't understand the meaning, but he recognized its purpose. A warning. This was a place where the Force pooled in concentrated form, older, deeper, stronger than anything above ground. A place ancient civilizations once feared or worshipped. Some site lost to the galaxy, buried under centuries of geological shifts. Kratos stepped deeper into the chamber. The moment he did, the air changed. A cold ripple swept across the cavern. The ground vibrated gently. Something had sensed him. Something ancient. Something connected to the very energy the Empire used and twisted. Kratos tightened his grip on the axe. He wasn't alone. A disturbance felt across the galaxy. Far above, still standing in the flooded canyon, the Inquisitors stiffened at the exact same moment. A pulse. A shift. A disturbance. Not of Kratos' body, but of the Force itself. The fifth brother turned his head toward the horizon. He lives. The seventh sister clenched her teeth. How? The river swallowed him. There was no trace. The eighth brother checked a sensor. Static. But the Force was clear. Something powerful had reawakened beneath the planet's surface. The seventh sister ignited her lightsaber. Then we go after him. Now. But before they could begin their descent, their comm units activated. A voice darker than the void itself spoke. Stand down. The Inquisitors froze. Every instinct in their bodies urged obedience. Because this was not a commander, not an admiral, not even the Emperor. It was Vader. Vader returns. High in orbit, the command bridge of the Star Destroyer fell silent as an unknown craft approached. A small, damaged shuttle barely held together. Inside that shuttle stood Vader, burned, drenched, scarred from the river's violent ride, but alive. More importantly, enraged. He limped forward, sparks trailing from his ruined armor. Crew members fell to their knees. The shuttle doors opened, and Vader stepped onto the bridge. His voice came out distorted, half broken, half mechanical. He is mine. The Inquisitors received the same order across their comms. Do not engage. Do not interfere. You will stand down. The seventh sister nearly spoke, but hesitated. The eighth brother bowed his head. The fifth brother simply accepted the truth. Vader had survived, and Vader demanded the final confrontation. No Inquisitor would dare challenge that. Kratos feels the darkness approach. Deep underground, Kratos felt a new tremor in the energy surrounding him. The air grew heavier, thicker, filled with a presence he recognized instantly. Vader. The cavern's breathless stillness seemed to echo the Sith Lord's approach, even from miles above. Kratos stood in the center of the ancient chamber, axe at his side. A low rumble shook the ceiling as distant machinery activated far overhead. He looked upward. He knew. The hunt wasn't over. It was evolving into its final stage. The Empire makes way for a Titan. Above ground, stormtroopers began evacuating from the canyon. ATS backed away. Transports lifted off. TIE fighters formed a perimeter, but none dared interfere. A shuttle descended, dark, scarred, silent. It landed gently at the canyon's edge. The ramp lowered. Vader stepped out. This was not the same armored demon who had first clashed with Kratos. His cloak was torn, his armor cracked, parts of his mask scorched black. But his presence? Stronger, sharper, fueled by humiliation and fury. A fury he had not felt since his days as Anakin Skywalker. Vader raised a single hand. The entire canyon shook as he reached out through the Force, searching for Kratos' signature, following the trail of power still resonating far below. He began to walk. Stormtroopers moved aside as though a living storm was passing through them. Vader's voice echoed across the canyon. Face me. The ancient chamber awakens. Back in the underground structure, Kratos stepped toward the center as the cavern responded to Vader's presence. Symbols glowed faintly. Channels in the floor pulsed with blue light. Dust rose from a stone as if breathing. Kratos didn't know the force. Not truly. But he knew when a battlefield was preparing itself. This place was reacting to their power, pulling energy from both warriors, feeding on the tension of the approaching clash. Something ancient wanted this battle. Something older than Jedi. Older than Sith. A remnant of a world that once knew gods. Kratos exhaled. He understood. He had been in places like this before. Places built to test warriors. Judge them. Break them. Elevate them. This was another such place. A proving ground. Vader descends into the abyss. Vader reached the crack in the canyon floor where the river had erupted hours earlier. The rocks were still wet. Steam drifted upward. He extended both hands. The stones groaned, shifted, lifted. He widened the gap, not with machinery, not with explosives, but with raw dark side strength. He stepped inside. His descent began. The deeper he went, the stronger the energy felt. Until finally, his boots touched the floor of the ancient chamber. Red light ignited. The Leviathan axe glowed in response. Two silhouettes faced each other across the cavern, framed by ancient walls marked by forgotten civilizations. Vader spoke first. "You will die in this place." Kratos leveled his axe. His voice echoed back across the chamber. "I have slain gods." The final clash begins. The cavern vibrated as both warriors stepped forward. Vader's saber ignited fully, casting red light across the runes. Kratos lowered his stance, axe held ready. The air thickened. Dust rose. Energy crackled between them. This was no longer a hunt, no longer a pursuit, no longer a test. This was an inevitable collision. A god slayer from another world against the fury of the dark side made flesh. Their weapons raised. Their steps quickened. Their power surged. And then, the cavern erupted in light, sound, and violence. Their final battle had begun. The chamber shook as the final echoes of battle faded into the ancient stone. Water dripped from fractured ceilings. Dust hovered in the air. The force, once raging like a storm, settled into a quiet pulse. When the light dimmed, when the energy drained, only one figure remained standing. Kratos. Breathing hard. Bloodied. Burned. But unbroken. Vader lay motionless among the shattered pillars, armor sparking, mask fractured, mechanical breathing failing in broken, uneven bursts. The dark side still clung to him, trying desperately to surge through his ruined limbs, to drag him back into the fight. But Kratos stepped forward and pressed a hand against the Sith Lord's chest. Not with hatred, with understanding. He had known gods who fell to their own rage. He had seen men become monsters. And monsters become prisoners of their own power. Kratos turned away as the chamber collapsed further, stone crashing around him. He walked toward the river tunnel, leaving Vader to the fate he had chosen, a fate earned long before their battle began. Above ground, scanners searched for answers. Inquisitors waited for orders. The Empire trembled, because somewhere in this galaxy, a new god walked free, and his story had only begun.